A good portion of my childhood was in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, we moved around a little bit when I was much younger, but my parents were both from there and my grandparents were all living there, so that was always home base. And then by the grade school years, that's where our family wound up settling. In the neighborhood that we lived, there was a creek behind our house, and it kind of went through the whole neighborhood. And there would be afternoons when the boys would just be roaming around back there in the woods and the creek. And occasionally somebody would spot a lizard that would change colors, a chameleon. And it would be fascinating to watch how that thing would work. If the chameleon lizard was on a tree on the bark, then it would appear brown, but then let's suppose it would jump onto the leaves, and within a matter of a couple of minutes it would turn green to match the color of the leaves. And whenever you would be able to spot it, you would just kind of sit there and watch and see what they were up to. Totally fascinating. Well, how about when that same chameleon-like change and shift happens with human beings? Although we're not talking about our skin tone, but we're talking about our relationship and our personality styles. That's an animal of a different color. Now, let's keep in mind that narcissists have a real high need to be in control, and one of the ways they do that is they try to craft an impression about who they are, because they want to manipulate you into thinking certain things about them so that they'll then have influence over you and they can maintain their position of superiority, and it's part of their exploitive nature. For example, have you ever known somebody who can be around the party crowd and they could just be really comfortable there, but then on Sunday morning you see them at church and it's like, well, I didn't realize you were so religious, and they can be like that. Or it can be that they may talk conservative politics with one group and may give the impression that they're right there with them, but then when they're over there with their liberal friends, they do the same thing there with them. It might be that they can be around high success and high society kind of people and hoity-toity, but then when they're over with the Bubba crowd, they can be just exactly like that. It may be that when they're with funny people and raucous and telling crude jokes, they can be exactly like those folks over there, but then when they go over to the deep philosophical professor types, well, act just like them. You have an idea of what I'm talking about? Now, in the best case scenario, we can call that adaptability. And sure enough, I think there is a great deal of emotional intelligence that's required for us to learn how to adapt to the people that are in front of us. And sometimes we need to know when to turn certain interests on or off based on the person in front of us. So I get that. The narcissist, though, is much more about just adaptability, keeping in mind it's about exploitation. They're wanting to get an insider's position so that they can seemingly be someone that you can trust, and that someone who's just like you, but then behind the scenes there lurks an agenda that you just don't know about yet. Now, before we get a little bit further with that, I do want to make you aware that below the videos we have some links to some books that I'd like for you to check into. One is one of my books, The Anger Trap. Now, these folks can make you rather angry, can't they? Another is When Pleasing You is Killing Me. And then another book is Laura Carranza's book, Ugly Love. And so if you check into those, you might find them to be very helpful in your library. And then we'd also invite you to subscribe to our network so that we can let you know when new videos come out and keep you up to date with all of that. Now, let's take a look at how chameleon narcissists tend to work and how they tend to get in right up next to you without you even realizing that something may be going on. One of the first things we want to recognize is that chameleons typically will come on in a real strong, friendly, helpful kind of way. Now, this may be in a romantic setting when you're just dating someone and they're wanting to impress you. And by the way, it tends to go very quickly because they can't keep up the facade forever. It may be in a business sense where they're trying to buddy up next to you, and keeping in mind they don't look for relationships, they're looking for assets, and that's what they're doing. But again, it doesn't appear to be that way. It might be in organizations or in social circles. Now, family relations are a little bit different. You can see some of the chameleon-like behavior that, let's say, a father or mother or an aunt or an uncle has, and you've known them for decades. And so theirs may be a little bit different. It's like they're one way in private and an entirely different way in public. But typically, the charm, the friendship, the pleasantness can be there. But eventually, as you get to know that person, there's going to be now, let's see what you can do for me. Let's see how you can help me out. And that leads to some other kind of thoughts. Typically, even though you don't know it right up front, the chameleon narcissist has some sort of angle they're getting at. In a dating situation, typically it's sex. Or in business, it's like, well, I'm wanting to be the nicest person you ever saw. There's a whole bunch of stuff about me you don't need to know, but I want to get money or some sort of deal or some sort of alliance. Or it may be that they're looking for social status and they're looking to climb a ladder in some sort of an organization, whether it's in business or other kinds of things. There's always an angle. They want to make sure that they're with the right person for their needs and their desires in the moment. That's what their angle is. Another thing that we can commonly say that's as a tactic of the chameleon narcissist is they tend to do up front a good deal of mirroring behavior. Now, what I mean by that is, let's suppose that I say to that chameleon narcissist, I enjoy playing tennis. And the chameleon can say, well, you know what? I've always liked tennis. That fascinates me. And I've played some, but I really want to do it a lot more. When in fact, they don't really care. Or it may be that somebody says, I enjoy the opera. And the chameleon can say, yeah, opera's really cool. When in fact, they've never been to one. Or they roll their eyes when they get an invitation to go there. But to you, they'll say whatever they need to say so that they can get on the inside with you. And so many times these individuals can give the impression that they're agreeable, that they like what you like, that they're into whatever it is you're into. Sometimes the chameleon narcissist can appear to be empathetic. Now, let's remember that one of the defining features of narcissism is that they have a lack of empathy. Bottom line is they care so much about themselves that they don't have a whole lot of room to expend emotional energy on you. But when they're in this chameleon mode and they're trying to get their inroad with you, they can come across as if they do care. Like, wow, I really like that that's something that you enjoy. Tell me more. Or it seems as though that's something that means a lot to you, and I can tell that that's really important. Give me an idea of how you learned how to think this way or feel this way, or how that interest came about in your life. You know, they can ask questions like that, and you can think, that person's really into me. It sounds kind of nice. But again, over time, it shows itself to be a ruse. Sometimes, now this is not often, but every now and then, the chameleon narcissist may actually make themselves to be vulnerable. Let's suppose that they have something in their deep history that if you find out about it, then it may change your opinion of them. So in an attempt to get ahead of the posse, they may speak to that. For example, they may say something like, yeah, I had a really bad breakup in a relationship, and I wound up cheating on my partner, and man, it just didn't turn out to be good. And I went to all sorts of therapy, and I went to recovery groups and things like that. And so I've been a really different person. So they might have to say things like that. But again, it's not because they like talking about themselves, but it's like, well, you're going to find out. So if I can put a spin on it first and get the upper hand, then that's what I'm going to try to do. Or it may be that they had a history with addictions, or it could be that they've been through a divorce, or maybe they've got some things in their family of origin that weren't all that terrific, or maybe they had some business strain and difficulty. So they'll talk with you in a seemingly vulnerable way to let you know, I'm human. And in fact, it may impress you that they would be willing to do so, because sometimes when you have that vulnerability, it implies a desire to truly have a sense of intimacy. And through some of our disclosures of personal mistakes and failures, we can actually learn how to love and encourage each other better. But in a narcissistic world, that's not what they're up to. It's all about gaining an edge before you find out some of the stuff that they may not want you to know, but there it is anyway. So the question is, when you're with this chameleon-like person, how do you protect yourself? Now, first things first, in whatever relationship you find yourself being in, be skeptical. Now, when I say skeptical, I don't mean cynical, but I mean be willing to weigh out who this person is, facts and impressions. Actually, in the classical sense of the word, skepticism means that you have a reflective way of thinking about things in front of you, or there's an inquisitiveness that you have. And before you just kind of go all in with a person's charming or seeming sincere or pleasant kind of communication, just remember there's always going to be a backstory, and it takes time for that to unfold. And so make sure that you have a healthy sense of skepticism. Now, that leads to another primary thought in terms of how to protect you, and that is be patient. Most of the time when you get to know the chameleon narcissist, they're in a hurry to go somewhere with your relationship. If it's dating, they want to get intimate way too quickly, or if it's business, they want to do a deal with you way too quickly, or if it's in some other kind of organization, somehow or another they want to rise to the top a little bit more quickly because they don't want to have to do the grind out work. And so patience is going to be your friend as you engage with these kind of folks. Rather than immediately bringing them in as an ultimate insider, don't go at their pace, go at your pace. And which leads to another thought, and that is as you are engaging with this person, make sure that you are true to yourself and you don't get swept up in all this Me Too-ism that they want you to get caught up in. They can be so charming and they can be so friendly that before you know it, it's like, hey, join me, will you? And you're over there thinking, how did I get into this mess? Or how did I wind up with this group of people or that activity? Because this isn't really me. But narcissists tend to have a way in their chameleon-like fashion to pull you into behaviors or commitments or issues that you don't particularly deem to be central to who you are. So let's keep in mind one huge thought, and that is trustworthiness, which is a hallmark of a healthy relationship, takes time to build. Narcissists, they want you to trust them, but they want you to trust them right away, which is a part of why they're doing all this shifting and all to give you an impression that might not necessarily be the true self. So the best way for you to engage with that person that comes on super friendly or super into you is to let it be known, it's flattering that somebody might think well of me, but I've got enough internal confidence that I don't have to have their immediate flattery, and I'm going to let some time and some patience go by, and let's see what really happens as this relationship unfolds, and see if what's on the outside is truly indicative of what's on the inside, or if this is some sort of phony baloney game. With the narcissist, you can lean towards the phony baloney.